This is Lightning Power Lunch, presented by Reif Rum on the Lightning Audio Network with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli.
I mean, I thought the first two periods were good. The third got a little away from us, but just when we move our feet and take the puck north and are confident out there skating up the ice, I mean, that's the big part. When we start trying to turn pucks over and make plays, it's when it bites us.
Nick Paul. Boy, we were just talking about him being a integral part of what this team wants to accomplish come playoff time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a pretty good assessment of some things going on with the Lightning right there. Lightning take on the Canadiens tonight. Is this a battle for first place? Oh, no. What's going to happen as the Atlantic Division standings continue to juggle a little bit? Buffalo getting a W yesterday.
Come from behind win against the Rangers. I mean, the Rangers have given teams competitive games. They've blown out some teams. They have some youthful energy with some guys called up from the minors. I watched a bit of the game last night, but Buffalo locked it down in the third period.
Yeah.
I have to say I'm impressed with how Buffalo plays just in a lot of different aspects. Yes, they can score. They have giddy up to their game, but they got a lead in the third period fairly early. They went up 4-3, and I mean, the Rangers didn't have a shot on net until very late. And this is kind of what we saw when the Sabres took that 1-goal lead into the third period against the Lightning. They can lock it down. Now, locking it down in the regular season is good practice for locking it down in the playoffs, but the playoffs, as we've said, are a whole different ballgame. But that is an important tool that seems to be in the Sabres' toolbox. I watched some of the game last night. So they got a regulation win, so they're 2 points up on both the Lightning and Canadiens, and they play again tonight. Tough back-to-back for the Sabres, even though they're at home. They're facing a team with a lot more on the line than them. Frankly speaking, Columbus.
Those regulation wins are great this time of year, especially. You get those. I mean, it just.
Well, if the Lightning can pull into a tie with Buffalo, they're going to need to get a regulation win to level that first tiebreaker, and then they have a lead in the second tiebreaker.
Yep.
But it's interesting. I'm not always able to hear the opposing coach. When we're on the road, I'm getting ready to do the show with you, whatever. I'm missing Coop right now. I mean, they had a full skate, the Lightning, or as close to a full skate as they've had in I don't know how many days or even weeks. But I did go to Marty St. Louis' press conference, which is interesting because the first half of it, or even the first 2/3 of it, was completely in French. So,
really?
I mean, there's a lot of French media here.
Yeah.
And so it really helps when the Montreal Canadiens have a coach who can speak French. Marty obviously can speak French. So suffice it to say, I only picked up bits and pieces of what he was saying. But then they took some English questions. And the first question out of the box was kind of like, you've clinched a playoff spot. How do you keep your team motivated? And Marty was like, you have to find creative ways. And ultimately, he's like, it's up to the players. Like, he's a very cerebral guy. He's a fiery guy. The Lightning fans know that well from when he played with the Lightning. He's also a thinking man's hockey person. He always has been. I think that's one reason why he's become a very good head coach. So it's not like he said, what do you mean? There's a lot at stake. Right. First place, home ice. He was acknowledging, look, they've kind of accomplished what they needed to in the regular season. They clinched a playoff spot. So he's like, I have to find creative ways to keep them motivated here down the stretch, which is interesting because they have some personal milestone goals that should motivate the team. Cole Caulfield's at 49 goals. He's been, can I use the word stuck, at 49 goals for 3 games. He hasn't scored in the last 3. So as they get closer to the end of the regular season, he may feel a little bit more pressure, like I really want to get to 50. Like, that's a huge accomplishment. So maybe pressure is the wrong word, but I don't think Cole Caulfield or the Montreal Canadiens want to let the season expire without him getting to 50 goals. They have 4 games left. And Suzuki's at 96 points. Getting to 100 points in his first, not his first year, but the first time that he would do it would be a huge accomplishment. So those are some of the motivating factors that may help keep a team focused. The Caps had it last year with Ovi. Getting to the record. They were very much engaged and emotionally invested into seeing him do well. So I think there are some elements here for the Lightning. We should mention this. McDavid went crazy last night. If you remember a couple of weeks ago, or maybe even a week ago, I said this race may get broken open if one of these guys can like explode for 4 or 5 points. McDavid had a 5-point night last night. So Cooch is 6 points back. I think he has an extra game, but he's going to have to get going here. Is he capable of having a 5-point night?
Absolutely capable.
He
absolutely.
is.
Yes.
But he's the points have been kind of dribbling in as compared to, I mean, he's on a point streak, but it's been basically like a point here, a point there, and he hasn't had,
God, what's the matter with him,
big
Mish?
game. Well, now that he sees the gap is 6,
Sure.
who knows what's going to happen? But it's coincided with the Lightning not playing as well, too, at least in these last 2 games. So, first place is on the line, potentially. The loser of this game will be in third. That much we can say with full certainty. Doesn't mean that team is going to finish in third, but we'll see what happens with Buffalo and Columbus. Other than that, is there a lot at stake tonight for the Lightning? Well, the fact that they had a full skate, and I'll try and give you an idea of who's out here late. Probably the guys who are still recovering from injury may be staying out for some extra work. And Brandon Hagel did come out late, which is a good sign. Sorelli was out for the full skate, so we'll see if he's able to play. I think John Cooper's like, all right, we've kind of given you a lot of optional skates here. Let's have a full morning skate. Corey Perry, I think, was out, but he left early. Not quite sure what happened there. Let's get our game in gear, which was the point of concern from some of our fans yesterday.
Yeah.
They wanted to see the team play better, and I think John Cooper does as well. But not at the expense of like playing guys who maybe are 50-50, right? It's not like it's a be-all, end-all to get the 2 points tonight.
Do we have an update on some of the guys who've been out that took to the ice this morning?
Well, I just told you Sorelli was a full participant.
There you go.
James was a full participant. Crozier, Carlisle, they were all full participants. Hagel came out late. Perry, we were all with the Marty St. Louis press conference, but Perry apparently was out on the ice and then left. So I'm not quite sure what happened there.
There you
may
go.
have an update on it.
We had some people asking.
And then
some questions
Hagel
there on the side.
came out right at the end.
Okay.
But none of these guys are in the red no contact jersey. So
Yeah.
all that's really positive in terms of being on the mend. And then Holmberg.
No, I
obviously,
was going to say no
was not
update
there.
on him.
No.
No update on him. So Dave Andreychuk, by the way, is going to be joining us.
Yeah,
here in
that'll be
about,
fun.
10 minutes. We'll get his thoughts on the game tonight. And I think for him, he's the perfect guy to have on when you start talking about what does it mean towards the end of the year, playing
Right.
well and not playing well. Does that translate to success or failure in playoffs? And he's obviously played in a ton of games and won championships. So it'll be interesting to get his perspective. There was also an interesting article that came out from The Athletic that I read early this morning, and it dealt with the best D pairings in the game. And there's been a lot of conversation, you know and I know, about J.J. Moser and
Yeah.
Darren Radish, and what does that mean? What does it look like? And is it getting a lot of love nationally? If that's how we want to.
Do people nationally look at the top D pairs, though? That almost seems like that's a specialty article written by somebody who works for The Athletic who would be interested in that sort of thing.
And I think you would be correct on
Yeah.
that. I'm going to have to get to this one later. Who should win the Norris Trophy and how should it be decided? That seems
Well,
like
it's a
my
little
alley.
bit of a. It's not quite like the Hart Trophy, but I think it's still a complicated vote because Bouchard has the most points, but did he have the best season by a defenseman? If we're just going to eliminate the defensive part of the game and just be like, this is an offensive defenseman award.
Right.
Is it Bouchard? Is it Makar? Is it Quinn Hughes? Is it Werenski? I mean, all of these guys have had great offensive seasons.
I need to find the article because it was a deeper dive into. It gets into the metrics. Let's put it that way. It gets into the metrics of the D pairings. But what you should take away from this conversation was that J.J. Moser is grading out extremely well with all of the metrics. And while they mentioned that Darren Radish some people believe could be a product of playing his offensive numbers with elite players, it does sing his praises as well.
Sure.
And they are right there. Here it is.
Yeah, who are the other top pairs?
It was Harmon Dale. I've never read Harmon's work before, but it was an interesting read. So NHL's first pair is 5-on-5 goal differential. Colorado's 1, Montreal 2, Tampa Bay 3.
So Montreal 1, I believe, is Matheson Dobson, right? Or are they including Hudson in there?
I think they're including Hudson in that. And
All right.
they basically come out and say, we know it's hard to track sometimes this because you could have your best defenseman playing 25 minutes and maybe his D pair is not playing as much. They definitely get into Lane Hudson and what
Hudson
he's been able
has
to
different partners. Matheson and Dobson have basically been together the whole year, and I think
So he
we'll
goes
pay
on-
attention to it tonight. I think that is actually their shutdown pair.
It goes on to say it's important to note that Mike Matheson and Noah Dobson's second pair
There you
takes on the
go.
toughest defensive matchups, which frees
Yeah.
Hudson's assignments to some degree. However, the advantage is probably offset by the rotating carousel of partners he's played with. But with the Lightning, and Dave Andreychuk's with us right now, we'll get to him in a second. It says, is J.J. Moser the most underrated defenseman in the NHL right now? It's a fair question to ask because quietly there's been a change of guard on Tampa Bay's blue line. Victor Hedman has been a shell of himself this year. He's been limited to 33 games because of injuries. His average just 18 minutes per game this season and was even lining up some games on the third pair before his most recent injury here in mid-March. Goes on to say Tampa Bay's top pair has been dominant despite Hedman's fall-off, thanks to Moser's emergence as an elite shutdown defenseman. Moser's pair has earned almost 59% of scoring chances and surrendered only 1.82 goals against per 60 at 5-on-5, which is the best mark in the NHL. He doesn't have many flashy elements to his game, but his IQ is off the chart, and he's been exceptional at breaking up plays. This breakout has also likely been aided by a shift back to his strong side. Radish, meanwhile, has been the perfect complement to Moser's pair, adding offensive spice. Radish is top 10 among all NHL defenders in points this season, with his bomb of a shot, in particular, emerging as a terrifying weapon. There's some evidence that this production is inflated by all the time he spent with Nikita Kucherov, but no one can deny that the club has found lightning in a bottle with this Moser-Radish combination.
All right, let me just say a couple things, then we'll get to Andy. I'm actually going to turn my camera off and I'll put on my other glasses and tell you who's out here late.
Yeah, go ahead.
So first of all, a lot of the data on Moser and Radish as a top pair came when McDonough and Chernak one was hurt or both were hurt. So I'm not discounting what they have done, but I think since McDonough and Chernak have come back regularly, they are getting not all, but more of the tougher matchups. I'm not saying this to discount what Moser and Radish have done. They've had a great year, and even I was saying when they were going 19-1-1, McDonough was out of the lineup and Chernak missed, a bunch of that time. They were the top pair with the gourd line, okay? But I think if you're just looking at the whole season and saying they are the shutdown pair, right now I'm not sure that they are the shutdown pair, let's just say going into the playoffs. That's one. Number two, who cares that Darren Radish is playing? Like, Darren Radish's numbers are his numbers. Like Cale Makar plays with Nathan McKinnon. Quinn Hughes plays with Kaprizov. That's baloney. I'm sorry. We can get Andy's opinion on it. Like, you shouldn't be penalized for playing with great players. If you put a great player on a team
There's Dave.
Yeah, I mean, if you put a great player on a team with, basically AHLers, that player's numbers will be affected.
Yeah.
So great numbers from great players usually are complemented by other great players. Anyway, I will punt to you. I'm going to try and figure out who's out here late for the Lightning so we get an idea on the lineup.
Well, Dave Andreychuk is here, the Hall of Famer and Lightning broadcaster and ambassador. It's an interesting question, Dave, because we've been talking a lot about Radish and Moser, and quite frankly, boy, haven't they been revelations this year? Moser playing at a high level, Radish career year. What do you make of both of those players having the years they're having? Is it just about opportunity? I think you're muted, Dave. That's all right. Some would want me muted as well. I don't know. We still can't hear you.
Yeah, I think Dave is muted.
We'll take
and
him
then
off
he wasn't
stage, see if
muted,
we
and we
can get
weren't
him.
hearing him. All right, well, he gets sorted. I'm going to do my do-si-do with my glasses here.
I know it was going to be a great response. By the way.
Yes, well, now all the build-up. Out late for the Lightning, we have Crozier and Santini, so that leads me to believe that the Lightning are using their usual 6D, although I do not see Carlisle out there, so I don't really know what to make of that. And then you've got Sabrin and James, and I also think Geekie is out there. So if Geekie is out there, that would, and Duke was reassigned, that would indicate a couple of Lightning players that have been out are coming back in, but we'll wait and see.
Just texting.
I want to check again, make sure that I saw Geekie out there.
Yeah. No doubt. Steve, should we try again with Dave? I don't know if you can tell on the back screen. Maybe yes.
There he is.
There
I
he
heard
is.
him at first.
I can't hear him. Turn it up!
Yeah, he has some settings issue, I think.
And you know, it's one of those things, it's just a button, but we've all been
it
there.
is.
It's just, the volume is.
Well, it's
is
been a
what it
while
is.
since we've had him on
I
Power
know.
Lunch, and
I
he's
know.
probably not used to our system. So, yeah, I see Geekie out there. I'm pretty high up here. So, I mean, I'm just telling you, it's not like they have numbers on their jerseys, but I think you're looking at Geekie and Sabrin and James out there late with Santini and Crozier, and then Johansson's.
So that would indicate they're not in the lineup.
That would indicate they're not in the lineup.
So
But I do not see Carlisle, and Hagel was out, but I think he left, so he's not getting the super extra work.
See, folks, you get this update every single time.
Yeah, and in fact, somebody might have asked Coop who's in tonight because he started his press conference. So
Yeah.
maybe that would have been the easier way to look for it. But
We're gonna
this
try
to me
Dave.
means Peltier is in,
Yeah.
right? And
That's interesting.
I don't know. I mean, I'm doing the math here in my head of the players that missed the last game. I'm only counting Sorelli coming in. Hagel is not in tonight. Coop said that. So,
Let's see if Dave Andreychuk is in.
Am
Do
I
we have
on?
Dave?
oh yes,
Yes.
hallelujah.
Yes. Sometimes you just go away and come back, and it works.
That's life in general, I think, Andy.
Well,
but
we built up your answer to this great question Greg asked.
we did. Well, we're in Moser and Radish. They've had
Yeah.
this great year. Radish, I think it's interesting to ask you, contract year, how much does that go into a player really bearing down? But how much of it do you think is opportunity for both those guys?
For sure, I think there's a big opportunity that they seized the. They were counted on, and they ran with it.
I think we may be having still.
Yeah, that's a microphone
No.
issue.
Yeah, I think it's a microphone issue,
Yeah.
Dave. We had you, and then
Oh,
it broke.
no.
And then
You're cutting in, cutting out.
Am I
you're still on. We
or
got you
no?
now. We got you. Oh, we got you. We got you. We
Oh,
got you.
back
We got
on. Okay. So, I think Moser's been good right from when he got here, to be honest with you. I think, yes, he's a little bit more in the limelight because we've had all these injuries, but he's been great. And as far as Radish is concerned, good for him, right? It's a great story. He's been awesome. I kind of hope they do sign him, but I got a feeling that it might be difficult. At the number that his agent will want, which he deserves, to be honest with you, with his numbers. So he might test the market, but they've been really good. I mean, and you're right. Every time somebody comes into the lineup, Dave, whether it's McDonough coming back, their ice time goes down. That's the way it works, right? Nick Paul is going to play less tonight because Anthony Cirelli's back in the lineup, and that's just that's the life. And I think same thing happened with that pair, which they were a top pair when everybody was out. Now that Chernak and McDonough are back, less time. They're not playing against the top guys at all times. So, but they've been good, really good.
We had a pretty spirited debate on yesterday's show, not so much Greg and me, but the fans. They fell on one side of either side of the ledger on this question. How important are these late regular season games in terms of winning, getting points, and playing well? And some fans are like, just get healthy. Doesn't matter where they finish. If they're recharged and ready to go at the start of the playoffs, that's what those fans want. Other fans are like, it's very important to play well. And
Yeah.
they're not playing well right now, and they need to correct that before the playoffs begin. What is your feeling on that question?
Well, I was always a guy that you can't just turn it on. There's no just flipping a switch in the playoffs and saying, "Oh, we're going to play better." Right? It doesn't happen. I've been on those teams where, I was with the Devils. We lost to Ottawa in the first round, and hey, we'll get better, and we just never did. And Ottawa took advantage of a team that was not playing well. So I think playing well helps. This group might be a little bit different because this group has had so much experience, right, in the playoffs. So where they finish, I don't think they care. Do the Buffalo Sabres care? Sure. Montreal? Sure. I think this team is, out of the three, is least concerned of where they finish. They start on the road. Who cares? We don't get the division. Like, as long as we get into the playoffs and we're playing our best. We'd love them to be healthy. I'm sure you guys have talked over the last few weeks about all the teams, not just us, that I have the injury. There's injuries, and it's the condensed schedule, lots of games. I mean, Ottawa, I think they got 12 defense on their roster now, right? Because they were decimated, and still it's a desperate team, as we saw the other night. So
Shabbat's coming back tonight too, way ahead of schedule.
Yeah, I'm in Buffalo actually, guys. It's interesting because I was out last night with Gilbert, the kid Gilbert that is now coming back. I can't remember his first name now, but I was with his dad. And
Dennis Gilbert.
Dennis Gilbert, correct. I was with his dad last night. He's making the drive to Ottawa today because the kid, he's coming back in the lineup. And Shabbat has been 12 days from surgery, plate and screws in his wrist, and he's coming back tonight to play, which is amazing. And I think that's just, that's the way the playoffs are, and that's where they think they are. So, but a huge game, everybody in Buffalo here is going to be watching this game. It's massive for these three teams on where they all going to sit. Montreal's playing really well. I think Montreal's the team that scares a little bit most teams in the conference because of how well they've played in the last little while. But we know we with this team, the Lightning, we just can't say that, they're not because they could just turn it on, right? They could just have one game where all of a sudden it switches and they don't spend any time in their own end. They get the save when they need it. Their power play comes through, like all the things that we've seen in the past. That could happen immediately with this team.
Dave, if you can, it's hard to do. How much does load management factor into the remaining X amount of games, assuming players are banged up, key players want to play, as you know.
Yeah.
But you also have to think big picture. If you have the luxury as a coach to rest a couple of guys, in your opinion, is that the right move? Or is it you got to let them play because that's just the nature of the game?
Well, I think they've already been doing that, to be honest with you. I think that they've sat out some guys that they probably could have played. I think, Cirelli might be one of them. Hagel's probably, they're just going to give him more time. So, they've already started that process, I believe. Tough call because as a player, I want to play. But I think, you've got to rein in some guys. I think the Vasilevsky plan is going to work to perfection. It'll be 59 games. He's at the top of his game. We all know what happened when he played. I think it was 65 or 68, David, going into the Columbus, something like that. We all thought he was overworked. Well, that plan has worked very well. So maybe after tonight, if they lose this game tonight, maybe they reset and say, okay, we'll play for third and we'll rest our guys and get ready to go. But I think they've already been doing that.
Andy, not all Hall of Fame players can be good coaches. And I don't know what the list is, but Marty St. Louis is on that list.
Yeah.
What is it about him that you think translates from being the player that he was into being the coach that he is?
Yeah. Well, let's just say, Dave, if they had iPads on the bench, he would not lift. He would not watch 1 minute of the game. He'd be on that iPad constantly analyzing his game. And as you know, back in the day, it was like, Nigel Kerwin, he was up Nigel's butt constantly to give him tape. And I think that's the difference with Marty. He just loves the game. He loves to analyze it. He'll break it down to the smallest of little plays, which we all know turn into big plays. And he's a good guy, right? Like, that's the other thing. He's fun to be around, which I think is part of being a coach now. Like, you can't be the stoic guy that nobody likes. They all got to like him. And I think they like him. They like his energy, which he brings. And I think, it was a no. All of us that played with him, when that happened, it wasn't a surprise to me. Maybe the jump, from coaching 14-year-olds to the NHL, that might have been bad. But I think everybody around him knew that was kind of what he was on his way to.
Those 14-year-olds that he was coaching, some of them may be in the NHL right now as 18-year-olds.
Yes.
That's a good point. Dave, as we get closer to the playoffs, you want your stars to perform during the playoffs. It's what separated the Lightning for so many years and still does to a degree with Vasi in net, Kucherov. Yep. You had Hedman on the back end. That's a given that they have to play well if you want a deep run. But are there a couple of guys you're looking at that you think could be difference makers that need to get going or need to sustain their level of play from now until the playoffs end for them to make a long run?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think you guys have watched enough playoff hockey, right? Your stars need to be stars. Yes, I agree. Totally. They need to be, at the top of their game. But what's the difference maker? Maybe your goalie makes a big save. But your difference maker, to me, is your bottom six, how they contribute. And it's not necessarily, I got to get a goal. It's maybe puck possession. It's offensive zone face-off, small little things. So with that being said, very unfortunate for the Holmberg incident, because I think that line could have been a difference maker. As we've seen in the prior cup, 20 and 21, like third and fourth line guys and lines might have been the difference. And I think that line could have been the difference. So who's in and out, is Geeky there? Who comes back in? Like they've got some options, but I really look at, Yanni Gord and, playoff player. He could be the big difference in the playoffs, and, not only his line, but, killing penalties. So, they have their stars got to be stars, but there are some bottom guys that, for me, can be difference makers.
We don't know Victor Hedman's status. We do know that Crozier and Carlisle are on the mend, but they're not ready yet. If the Lightning have to go into the playoffs with their 6D that they're currently using, with the pairs as they currently are, what is your feeling about how that part of their lineup is constructed?
Yeah, well, we always thought the concern, was Datsuk and his partner, Lilleberg, right? But, man, they've played pretty good together, right? Like, as of late. They had struggled a little bit at times. Are you going to be top four heavy? We've always kind of thought in my mind that most teams are just going to go with their four and sprinkle in the other guys, right? Lightning have never really done that, right? Like, even though when you had Hedman in, you've had some top guys, they still were getting that third pairing in. So, I think the pairs are solidified. Hopefully everybody stays healthy. I think the Lilleberg and Datsuk, Datsuk, obviously, what an unreal story. I sat with him at a dinner, and it just still blows me away that, how we found this kid and how he's turned out, and just his attitude, and so happy to be here and just thankful that he's in the NHL, which he should be, but he's been great. And maybe, we'll see. It's his first playoff experience, and they can ease him in, but he can be a difference maker on the blue line, because he can add so much to it, not only defensively, but maybe offensively. I feel like him and Kucherov have something going He likes to find Kucherov, which everybody does, but he skates and he's up with the play at the right times. He's just he's been impressive.
Dave, last question for me. You're in Buffalo. Obviously, you played there. What's that buzz like from somebody who was part of that organization? And what do you make of them in general? Because they don't have obviously a lot of playoff experience per se. Yeah. How big of a concern would that be going into that first round?
Well, for the fans here, it's not. Hey, listen, I'm extremely happy for the whole community, right? And the Buffalo Sabres and what they've gone through, and 14 years. It's been tough, right? I've had friends that are in and out of season tickets, and I don't want to go to the game. The product sucks, it's been difficult. It really has. So I'm happy for them. They're in the playoffs. I think their best chance is to start on the road, to be honest with you.
I've talked about that. Yeah.
Yeah. I was telling everybody last night that I think that's, everybody wants to win the division and, we've got to, beat the Tampa Bay Lightning. And I'm like, I think they just need to get into the playoffs, experience it a little bit. I think, Dave, you can attest to this, us losing in 2003, you win against Washington and then you lose to the eventual champs in New Jersey. We learned it a lot, that playoff run. A lot of first-time playoff players, the St. Louis, Richards, they've never been in the playoffs before. And that kind of reminds me of Buffalo a little bit, where Buffalo, you don't win the cup just having one good year. You build up to it. And, maybe this team needs to have a playoff, get some playoff experience. But, I talked to Lindy when they were on the little bit of a run, and, we're obviously good friends. We played together. He coached me. I asked him what the difference was, and he says, Dave, I have no idea. I got the same players. I got the same system. I said, well, is it your GM coming downstairs and saying something? He says, I hope that's not the case, because they're pretty soft if they're worried about, like a GM coming down and ranting to them. You're going to play hard regardless. I don't think they're not playing hard, but he really couldn't put his finger on it. He thought it was just a little bit of confidence. This group has been together for a little while. They're a bunch of young guys. I think they like each other. A lot of things similar to what the Lightning went through with, Norfolk days and all those kids coming up and all were together and, they hung out together and their girlfriends were together, and all that is kind of where the Sabres are at. And again, it's been great for the community. I'm looking forward to tonight, because I don't know if I've been to a game in a long time that's been sold out. And, they're going to be pumped up.
Playing Columbus, you're talking
Columbus,
about.
yeah. Huge game for Columbus. So, but, very real Tampa, Buffalo going to meet in the playoffs. It's very possible. If not the first round, it might be the second round.
Last one for me, Dave. So just for the record, we had Mike Harrington on, longtime reporter covering the Sabres, before the Monday game, and he was the opposite. He was like, I think it's really important for them to get home ice, whether it's first or second. Kind of like, I remember that 2003 team, like, you're learning. It's better to learn on the road and lose a game, because if you lose that first game at home, now all of a sudden the pressure's on. And, you guys pulled the 4 straight after losing the first 2 at home. That's hard to do. Anyway, my question is about this notion of playoff experience for Buffalo, because while many of their players have never been in an NHL playoff game, some have.
Yes.
Zucker has. Tuch has. Ryan McLeod went to Game 7 with Edmonton. There are players with international experience, Dahlin and Tage Thompson. How much does that offset kind of the collective newness of this when you have guys like yourself on the 2003 team who had been through what this is all about?
Yeah, the Luke Shen signing, right? Like, that's
Luke Shen.
Yeah, to me, like, and they everybody last night was like, oh, you really can't play him. Says, well, he's not here to play on the ice. He's here to, like, get them ready for the playoffs and what it's going to be like, right? Because obviously he's been through it. So I think you're right. There is some players with experience, but I think their top guys, their top goaltender, their top forward, their top defense, they have not been in the playoffs. So how these other guys are going to get them ready for the playoffs, the Tuchs of the world, that will be interesting. So, yeah, Mike Harrington, yes, you want to. I just think it's better for that group that there's no pressure on the road. You go into Montreal, be an awesome atmosphere, and you just go and play hockey. For us, we pulled a rabbit out of the hat in 2003 when we lose our first 2 games, and we go on a 4 straight run. With Marty leading the way. That does not happen very often, and the Buffalo Sabres might be in trouble if that happens to them.
Andy, this was great. We appreciate it, and have fun at the game tonight, and we'll see you at the rink.
Yeah, I'll be
soon.
watching on my phone the other game that means a lot more to me than the game I'm watching. So
all good.
It'll be
Thanks,
fun.
Andy.
Thanks, Andy. Appreciate you. All right, Hall of Famer Dave Andreychuk joining us.
It's like a different kind of split screen. It's not a split screen. It's one screen and then live action in front of you. I'm surprised that it's the first sellout in a while. I thought they were sold out for the game against the Lightning. But he would know.
He's there.
Yeah.
You want to get to some questions here, or is there anything
you
want to
Let's
address
do it.
there?
There's still a few guys out late. I think it's actually Santini and Crozier. And then there's a third guy, maybe James. The goalie is off, Johansson. So
Vlad says, as for me, it's not a tragedy that McDavid earns 5 points, and maybe it makes Cooper or forces him to give some main players a rest.
I think we might see game 82, honestly. I mean, the Lightning are going to play their main players tonight, and I think they're going to play their main players on Saturday. If they're locked into wherever they're going to be locked into by Wednesday, and I do know for certain, I think I can actually look. Whether it's one of the two, Montreal or Buffalo, will be done by Wednesday when the Lightning play their final game. I can't remember which one of these two teams is finished on the Tuesday, but I can actually look that up very quickly for Montreal. So Montreal plays on the 14th. So the Canadiens will be done 82 games played when the Lightning have not yet played game 82. I think the Sabres might also play on the 15th. But that might be a situation where if the scoring race is out of reach, basically, and they're locked into where they're locked in, we may see a number of players getting some rest.
Greg says,
but I think what the sense I'm getting today is with the full skate, Cirelli's in by all indications. Like the Lightning want to play better tonight.
Yeah. Greg Vassy is in net tonight.
Yes.
That was a question we had. Jim wants to know which specific matchup, detail like zone entries, defensive pairings, or special team striker has been the biggest limiting factor for the Tampa Bay Lightning against top Atlantic Division teams.
I don't know. I mean, the Lightning, so which are the top Atlantic Division teams? Buffalo, Montreal, Carolina? Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah, I would say, yeah.
Carolina is they're just a different animal because when they get their forecheck going, you can beat them, but they still may outshoot you, like 45-21. It's just they are such a pressure team that they sometimes give up counters. But if we're looking at Montreal and Buffalo, the Lightning, I don't think they've played their best. For sure, they did not play their best in 2 of the 4 games against Buffalo. The game they won, and I will even say the 8-7 game, because they did a lot of good things offensively, that was offset by some bad things defensively. Like, they showed better, I think, in those 2 games. But I'm not sure that it's one thing. Like, I'm just going to... So let me just say something in general and then specific about these teams. In general, when the Lightning are on a run, 19-1-1, 15-3, all of those areas, for the most part, are above average. I mean, it's hard to be perfect, but they are certainly above average. Excuse me. When the Lightning are struggling, no matter the opponent, those areas tend to be below average. What can we say about Buffalo and Montreal? In some ways, they are similar. They are transition teams. They play with speed. You have to be ready if the puck is turned over, even if you have possession in the offensive zone, and you have a shot that's blocked, there may be somebody flying the zone. That's how Zucker scored in the 8-7 game. It was 7-6 Lightning. There was a shot blocked, and Zucker was gone, and they scored on a breakaway. Montreal's is a team that can do that too. To me, there is one, and maybe this is, I don't even know if this is a huge difference, but I do think it's a difference. And this is meant as not a diss on Buffalo. They have some great, great players on their team, clearly. And they've had a great season. Suzuki, Caulfield, and Hudson, though, are three of the best players in the NHL. Period. Right? They are game breakers. You have Tage Thompson, you have Dahlin. I mean, Tage Thompson can score from anywhere. I'm not saying that he's not a great player. He is a great player. But how Montreal can put together a line or a power play, that is a little different than some other teams that may be really good teams. I'm not saying that it makes Buffalo easier. Far from it. I'm just saying that the Montreal attack has a different look to it than some other teams, including Buffalo, and presents maybe a little bit of a different challenge. What I saw from Buffalo last night, though, and the game against the Lightning, like if the Sabres get a lead in the third period, it is like lights out. That's how they're playing right now. And, I mean, can the Canadiens say the same? I'm not entirely certain that that's the case. I guess I haven't watched them enough to know if they can really, just lock it down in the third period. I guess I can look at their record after two. But that, excuse me, that to me is one difference between the teams that, the Sabres don't have a 50-goal scorer on their team. Unless I'm mistaken, they don't have a 100-point guy in their team. And while Dahlin has had a good year offensively, he's not where Hudson is. So those are special, special players, and sometimes those special players are very hard to contain in a playoff series. I don't know if that's really what Jim was asking.
Yeah.
He was saying, what area of the Lightning struggled in against these different teams. And I'm just like, when the Lightning are playing well, they're not struggling as much. And when they're playing worse, they struggle more. But if they get Montreal or Buffalo, and it's not guaranteed that they will, because if they finish in first, they're going to get a different team. Defending the rush and being aware of transition attack is going to be a huge key against either team.
Tonight, enjoy some Reif Rum, smooth, versatile, now pouring at Benchmark International Arena. Order a tropical wave or a lightning mule and taste why fans are switching. Reif Rum is a premium craft Florida local rum built on authenticity, quality, and easy drinkability. Ask for Reif Rum by name. Go Bolts. Enjoy responsibly. All right, let's get to Cameron. Do you guys still believe that this team has another gear and that the ability to switch into comes playoff time when looking at the last 3 years of first-round exits?
So, if we're looking at 2023, that team is very different than this year's team. And even last year to this year, the team is different. It is different. Players have different roles. We have newer players that we didn't have in the playoff series last year against Florida, and the opponent's going to be different. So they are going to need to find a higher gear, but so will every team that's in the playoffs. That's why, when Dave Andreychuk talks about the disadvantage of not being through it and understanding what playoff hockey is all about, that's a real thing. So the level goes up, you have to find another gear, or else you're going to be out. Does that mean that the Lightning definitively didn't find a higher gear the last 3 years? Or maybe it was their opponent found an even higher gear than them, which may be part of it too. Again, at the risk of repeating myself, I actually felt they played well enough to beat the Leafs in 2023, but every big play went against them. Which, look, Toronto deserves credit for making those big plays, scoring overtime goals.
Yep.
Matthews had a number of huge series swinging plays in that series. But if we just look at how did the Lightning play, I thought they played pretty well against Toronto in 2023. They did not outplay the Panthers in the last 2 years, though.
Yeah, that's fair.
And the Panthers went on to win the Stanley Cup both years.
To answer your question, yes, I do think they can flip that switch.
Yeah, you were much more succinct than me, as usual.
That's just where I am. Ranger says, so is it safe to say that everyone with the exception of Hedman and Holmberg basically day-to-day and or could suit up tonight?
Well, Ranger, you're excluding the longer-term guys like James Crozier, right, and Carlisle. But other than them, yeah, it seems that that's the case. Hagel was termed day-to-day. I think Sabrin was termed day-to-day, too.
Cal says playoffs are a fresh start. Don't sweat the remaining games, in my opinion. Yeah. Lucas, my man, says first round tickets acquired. Thank goodness for the pre-sale email. Good stuff. Love that. Zebra says, do you agree the Jack Adams Award is primarily given to the most surprising team rather than the true best coach? It's odd that Coop has never won one, yet coached Team Canada for years. Thoughts?
So we have covered this topic numerous times on the show because I am somebody who has a vote, and I can tell you that I do not always vote for the quote-unquote most surprising team. In fact, I've said often I will put down a coach because we get 3. You do rank them first, second, and third, and there's a point value assigned to each ranking. So first place gets more points than second place, which gets more points than third place. I am usually putting down the coach of the top team, because I think that that's an accomplishment. So, yes, surprising is a category. And often there are coaches that get votes because they took their team to a level and a point total that was not expected. The other categories I've talked to is kind of the quote-unquote overcoming adversity component. And I think there are a lot of coaches that can probably check that box this year. They got their teams to do extremely well in the face of adversity. Usually that means injuries. And I think John Cooper is probably going to get some votes because of that. You know, the Lightning have done as well as they've done with major and significant injuries that have taken players out for a huge chunk of time. How has John Cooper never won it? Again, this is a topic that we've discussed many, many times. It is a regular season award, and often the Lightning are not the top team in the NHL. They are not a surprising team in the NHL. Maybe if they have overcome adversity, it's been less adversity in the minds of voters than some other teams. And the fact that he's coached Team Canada does not factor in. This is based on what his team has done in the regular season in the NHL. So, as we have said, if we picked a coach of the decade, I think John Cooper would win hands down. But that's not how the voting goes. And also, I can't speak for the other broadcasters.
Yeah.
You know, every broadcaster has an opinion about who they want to put on the ballot. I can tell you, though, this year, Colorado's going to win the President's Trophy. This may be a year where I do not put Jared Bednar on my ballot, just because I think that there have been some coaches that I haven't decided yet, but there are some coaches in the East who I think deserve serious consideration. And, yeah, some of them are coaches who have taken teams to levels that nobody expected. We've talked about that. Dan Muse in Pittsburgh, Marco Sturm in Boston, Lindy Ruff in Buffalo. Marty. I mean, this team was an 8th seed last year, and they may win the division. Did anyone have that on their, preseason prediction card that the Montreal Canadiens would win the Atlantic Division? Marty's done a hell of a job.
He does, yeah. No, there's no question. Ultimate Lemon says, wish I could have some of Greg's unbridled optimism given the playoff results the last 3 years. Think the injuries and lack of consistent play lately will be too much to overcome.
What lack of consistent play, though?
Radish plus minus last couple of games is a little rough.
Yeah, but I mean, let's back up to Sunday. They just beat the Boston Bruins with one regulation loss in their last 11 games after completing their homestand. What is this about the lack of consistent play? Yeah, they had a rough stretch coming out of the Olympic break, and they have had subpar play since they clinched a playoff berth. I think that that's understandable. I disagree. I disagree that there has been, quote-unquote, lack of consistent play, let's just say over the last 2 to 3 weeks. On this road trip, they have struggled, yes. If they go through the last 6 games of the regular season looking like that they have looked in the previous 2, okay, then we can say they really didn't go into the playoffs very well. But I don't think anybody was complaining about their lack of consistent play when they went 5-1-1 on their homestand and beat some really good teams that were desperate for points. The Ottawa Senators were desperate for points. Lightning beat them. They beat the Bruins, who were maybe a little less desperate, but still desperate for points. They beat one of the top teams in the league in Minnesota on that homestand.
Yeah.
Nashville was desperate for points They beat
Listen,
Nashville.
I
They
we're
had
not
some
gonna,
quality wins.
We're not going to go down this rabbit hole. There are other people who aren't fans that think this Lightning team is struggling. I'm not in that boat. I think if we're comparing it though to the start they had or the finish into the Olympic break, that may be unfair. That was a very high level of play.
But they show that they can get to that level, and I maintain they are going to need to get to a higher level, regardless of how they finish. They could finish these last 4 games 4-0. They're going to have to play better.
I agree.
Playoffs.
And I think it's unreasonable to hold them to that expectation for an 82-game season. I think I made the comment they were in the zone during that time. I mean, it just everything they were doing was working. Can they get back to that? Sure. I don't think they need to get to that level to win a cup because I don't think that's sustainable. But I think we all agree they can be better, and they need to be better.
Yeah.
Once the playoffs start. TBL says, is Greg just the biggest Christmas fan ever? He's always drinking out of a Christmas mug, and now the shirt. It's April, Greg.
For fans on the audio stream, Greg has a very festive shirt.
I do have this
That's a
festive
great
shirt.
shirt.
It's one of my favorite
Dad
shirts.
with the
Dad, right? Christmas
with
tree.
the opening in the letters with one
I do
is a
love
Christmas
Christmas. I mean,
tree.
it is what it is.
One is a snowman.
It is what it is.
I think that maybe that is an indication that Greg has not done his laundry in a while.
That's fair.
I don't want to jump to conclusions, though.
You know, when it was March 25th, I went to my girls and I said, girls, do you know what today is? What? It's March. I said, that's right. 9 more
25th.
months. 9 more months till Christmas. And they're like, Dad, come on.
If they make an Elf 2, you could be Buddy Jr.
That's
You have the same enthusiasm.
you finally did it. And it's the best made, the best coffee
You'd have
in
to
New
get
York.
you a wig with curly
World's best
hair,
coffee.
probably.
That's right. Could you be a bald Santa? I don't know. The other Greg says, I agree. We want them healthy, but I don't want to see this play roll over to the playoffs. Seems like they are playing half-hearted. So we're getting a lot of that, and I get it. Like they're not as buttoned up as you want to be. I think some of that is circumstances. I think some of it is you do clinch and you're ready for the playoffs to begin. Yeah. I don't know if I'm going. I think if you made up your mind, you've made up your mind already on the Lightning. If you think this is going to be a problem heading in the playoffs, or if you're kind of like me, I think they're going to find another level, and probably you, once the playoffs begin. Whether that's good enough,
Right.
we can have conversations about it. But.
And then that opinion will either be validated or challenged based on how they do after game 1 of the playoffs. And we'll come on the show and be like, the fans who were nervous were wrong, or the fans who were nervous had every reason to be right. They're going to have to play a lot better. We'll see. We don't know until we actually get to game 1 of the playoffs. I think everybody, you, me, every fan that is listening or watching us, the players, the coaches, Julian Breezeball, everybody understands the Lightning are going to have to play at a higher level than what we have seen at any point this year when the playoffs begin.
Right there with you. Mythos says, need Dominic James back, bro. He brings so much electricity. And Mythos also says Pontus is a heavy loss. That's for sure. Yeah, I think you're right on all of that. Tampa Bay says, no point in playing their main guys. Look at Florida last year. So I'm just kind of going through these.
Yeah, we still have this, break of opinion about what fans want to see in these last 4 games.
Yeah. Jim says, saying that Tampa Bay Lightning have playoff pedigree really isn't accurate and just sounds like marketing fluff. It's a completely different team.
Yes, I was reading. I wasn't listening. I was reading.
I don't like when an analyst or pundit say that.
So look, when you go out in the first round 3 straight years, fans have a right to say they haven't had playoff success. But when they talk about playoff pedigree, there are a lot of cup winners on the Lightning still. And even if you include the guys that came to the organization after the 2021 Cup, the ones that were here in 21-22 that season had a deep playoff run. And even losing in the first round gives you experience. Like the Montreal Canadiens are in a better position this year than they were last year, having lost that series last year to Washington. But I understand the fans' point. I do. But to say that, like, Nikita Kucherov doesn't understand what it takes to win a Stanley Cup is wrong. To say that Braden Point doesn't understand what it takes to win a Stanley Cup is factually wrong. Vasilevsky, McDonough, Chernak, Cirelli. A lot of other teams can't make that same statement. But if we're looking not even at recent history, Lightning have not won a playoff series since beating the New York Rangers in the 2022 Eastern Conference Final. I also said on yesterday's show, I think that this is a bone of contention for a lot of these players.
Yeah, right.
I think that the Lightning
Yeah.
will be, like, every team is going to have its own challenges, motivations, whatever. I mean, every team wants to win the Stanley Cup, but, like, every team has its own narrative. I think for the Lightning, it's not this year. Not happening again. We are winning a series. I think that is going to be a point of focus for them. And that may not be a bad thing.
Dave says their recent struggles are a direct result of the composition of the lineup. Cirelli and Hags are not just top six guys. They're literally the heartbeat of Tampa guys. It's like having double bypass, man. Well,
when they come back in, I guess that's after the surgery. Is that the idea? Right. I'm making light of... But thank goodness we have the surgery, right? That right. People can get that care that they need. Look at me, like, stepping into a hornet's nest.
Get your medical hat
Hornet's nest was on the ground. I just stepped right into it. I know nothing about cardiac surgery, but I do know.
In Motel 6.
Yes, I do know that the fans' point is an accurate one. Hagel and Cirelli do bring a lot.
Yeah,
and one or both they've missed some time here recently. I think that one big reason why the Lightning were able to go out west and really rejuvenate was Hagel and Cirelli. I mean, their line with Kucherov had, 28 points in 3 games. So they did a lot offensively, but just how they played. Like, they really led the charge. So, and as we know full well, Hagel only played basically half of that series last year. They missed him.
No doubt. I mean, that's... huge. Joe says Bjorkstrand looked much better in the last game on the Yanni line. Let's hope his level of compete increases.
For his sake, yes. I mean, you talked about, and we did both on yesterday's show, about Nick Paul getting a goal and an assist against Ottawa. And maybe that would help him with his swagger, his confidence. He's been winning face-offs. Having good stuff happen for Bjorkstrand going into the playoffs would probably help his confidence too.
Let's get to maybe one last question. I'm scrolling through the ones. Anthony, who cares how they play without their second line after clinching? The biggest question right now is roster construction after Holmberg injury. What's your third line?
It's a great question, Anthony, and that is something that John Cooper and his coaching staff are probably going to be trying to figure out going into the playoffs. And if they feel that they can use the Gord line without Holmberg in a shutdown line, maybe they have to give that responsibility to a different line. Hagel and Cirelli have done it before.
And, this is where you have some options. Does Nick Paul become important there potentially? Do you do anything with Gage Gonsalves? There are some guys
Bjorkstrand,
who's
Dominic
filled that
James
role with
Gord before with Seattle.
For sure. So we'll see how it plays out. Partner, we're going to end the show there. Glad we were able to get Dave Andreychuk on, even we had some technical difficulties at the beginning. But we will have the broadcast tonight, 6:30. Will be the pregame 7 o'clock. You and Patty Maroon once again getting it done.
And then you and I have a pre-tape tomorrow.
Pre-taping
I got some family stuff. I got kids to see in Boston.
I love it.
So
love it. Check that out. So we'll make sure we do that. And I will talk to you tomorrow.
Talk to you tomorrow
as well. Thanks, Steve Ersnick, as well. Thanks to all of you for listening. We appreciate it. Christmas and all. I am Greg Linnelli. You've been listening to Power Lunch right here on Lightning Radio.